When I signed the divorce papers, my hands did not shake. That part surprised me the most. I always imagined I would cry or feel weak or fall apart right there in the office, but I didn't. I had already cried all my tears long before that day. The real ending came weeks earlier, on a quiet evening when I packed my clothes into 2 suitcases and left the house I once called home. The house was silent, except for the sound of hangers sliding across the closet rod. Each small noise felt loud, like it was announcing my failure. My ex-husband stood in the doorway. He didn't yell, he didn't stop me. He just watched. His face showed no panic, no regret, only distance. That hurt more than any argument ever could. I folded my dresses slowly, touching the fabric like I was saying goodbye to another version of myself. The woman who believed love could fix everything. The woman who waited. The woman who forgave too much. When I zipped the suitcase, something inside me went quiet. Not numb, just tired. 3 weeks later, I heard through family that he had moved his mistress into that same house. The same kitchen where I cooked Sunday dinners, the same bedroom where I prayed for our marriage at night, the same couch where I sat alone, wondering why love felt so lonely. I sat on my new couch, smaller, cheaper, but peaceful, and let the news settle in my chest. I didn't scream, I didn't call him, I didn't ask why. I already knew the answers. That night, rain tapped gently against the window, soft and steady. I wrapped myself in a blanket and listened. Sometimes the world knows exactly how you feel and speaks for you. I whispered to myself, "You survived leaving, you will survive this too." It didn't sound strong. It sounded honest. 2 days later, my phone rang. I almost ignored it when I saw her name, his mother. After the divorce, I assumed she would fade out of my life like everything else connected to him. That's how these things usually go. But something told me to answer. Her voice broke through the phone, shaky and wet with tears. "Baby," she cried, "I don't know what to do anymore." She called me baby, the same way she always had, the same way she did when things were good. And in that moment, I realized something I wasn't prepared for. Some endings don't close quietly. Some stories keep unfolding even after you think the final page has been turned. I took a deep breath, leaned back on the couch, and listened. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Your support helps keep real stories like this alive and heard. I met my ex-husband's mother before I met most of his family. The first time she hugged me, she held on a little longer than expected and said, "You feel like family already." At the time, I didn't know how rare that kind of warmth would become in my life. She wasn't perfect, but she was honest. She noticed things. When I was quiet at dinner, she noticed. When I smiled too hard, she noticed that too. Sometimes she would pull me aside and ask, "You okay, baby?" And most of the time, I would just nod. During the marriage, she defended me more than once, not loudly, not in front of everyone, but in calm, firm ways that let her son know she saw the truth. I appreciated that more than she ever knew. After the divorce, I expected our connection to fade. Divorce usually draws a hard line between people. You pick sides, you let go, you move on. But she didn't disappear. Every few weeks, she would call. Short calls, gentle calls, nothing dramatic. "How you holding up? I just wanted to hear your voice." I never spoke badly about her son, not because he didn't hurt me, he did, but because carrying bitterness felt heavier than carrying silence. My healing needed peace, not explanations. The day she called crying was different. Her voice wasn't steady. It trembled like something inside her had finally cracked. She told me her son wasn't the same anymore, that the house felt tense, that the woman living there brought arguments, cold looks, and constant pressure. "She doesn't like me," she whispered, like she was ashamed to admit it. I listened without interrupting. Sometimes people don't need advice, they just need someone to hear the truth they've been holding in. She said, "I raised him better than this," and then, quietly, she asked the question that sat heavy between us. Did I fail him? That question broke my heart. I took a breath and answered gently, "No, you didn't fail him. He made his own choices." There was a long silence on the line, the kind of silence that feels full, not empty. In that moment, I understood something clearly. Pain doesn't disappear just because roles change. Sometimes the same house that breaks one woman eventually breaks another. And as I held the phone to my ear, listening to her breathe, I realized our story wasn't over yet. It was simply changing shape. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Your support helps keep real stories like this alive and heard. She told me she finally went to visit her son after months of putting it off. She said she kept making excuses, telling herself she was busy, telling herself he would call first. But deep down, she already knew something was wrong. When she walked into the house, she said it didn't feel like her son's home anymore. The furniture was rearranged, the air smelled different. Even the light coming through the windows felt colder somehow. "It felt like I walked into someone else's life," she said softly. The woman was there, the one who replaced me. She barely looked up when my former mother-in-law stepped inside. No smile, no greeting, just a quick glance, like she was being measured. My former mother-in-law said she stood there for a moment, holding her purse, waiting for someone to say, "Come in." No one did. Her son sat on the couch, scrolling on his phone. When he finally looked up, he smiled like everything was normal. "Hey, Ma," he said. That was it. She went into the kitchen, hoping for comfort in a familiar space. But even the kitchen felt wrong. The cabinets were rearranged, the counters were cluttered. The quiet order I once kept was gone. She said the woman spoke to her only once that evening, just one sentence. "Dinner will be ready when it's ready." No kindness, no warmth. My former mother-in-law tried to stay polite. She helped wash dishes, she asked simple questions, she laughed at stories that weren't funny. Her son didn't notice, or maybe he noticed and chose not to care. That night, she slept in the guest room. She said the bed was stiff and the room smelled like dust and old boxes. She stared at the ceiling for hours, listening to voices through the wall, laughter that didn't include her, whispers that reminded her she no longer belonged. "I cried quietly," she told me. "I didn't want them to hear me." Those words sat heavy in my chest. In the morning, she woke early and made coffee. No one joined her. She sat at the table alone, hands wrapped around a warm mug, thinking about the son she raised and the stranger he had become. When she left, there were no hugs, no "drive safe," just a door closing behind her. "I never thought my own child's house would feel so cold," she said. I closed my eyes as she spoke. That house had taught me many lessons, most of them painful, and as I listened to her story, I understood something clearly. A home can have walls and furniture and people inside it, and still not feel like home at all. After she finished telling me about that visit, there was a long pause on the phone. Not an empty pause, the kind filled with unspoken thoughts and heavy breathing. I could hear her trying to steady herself, trying not to cry again. I didn't rush her. Some moments need space. Then she spoke, her voice smaller than before. "Can I ask you something?" I said yes, even though I didn't know what was coming. Another pause, longer this time. "Can I come stay with you?" she said, "just for a few days?" The question caught me off guard. I stared at the wall in front of me, at the faint crack near the window I kept meaning to fix. My apartment was small, quiet, carefully rebuilt. For a moment, my mind filled with questions. After she finished telling me about that visit, there was a long pause on the phone. Not an empty pause, the kind filled with unspoken thoughts and heavy breathing. I could hear her trying to steady herself, trying not to cry again. I didn't rush her. Some moments need space. Then she spoke, her voice smaller than before. "Can I ask you something?" I said yes, even though I didn't know what was coming. Another pause, longer this time. "Can I come stay with you?" she said, "just for a few days?" The question caught me off guard. I stared at the wall in front of me, at the faint crack near the window I kept meaning to fix. My apartment was small, quiet, carefully rebuilt. For a moment, my mind filled with questions. Was I ready for that? Would this reopen wounds I was still learning to close? Would I lose the peace I fought so hard to create? I thought about boundaries, about healing, about how long it took me to feel safe in my own space again. But then I thought about her voice, the loneliness in it, the way she had always treated me with kindness when she didn't have to. I remembered the nights she defended me gently, the meals we shared in that same house, the way she once told me, "I just want you to be okay." My answer came softly. "Yes," I said, "you can stay with me." She exhaled like she had been holding her breath for days. "Oh, thank you," she whispered. "I won't be any trouble." I smiled, even though she couldn't see it. "I know," I said. "You never are." After we hung up, I sat in silence for a long time. The rain started again, light against the window. I looked around my apartment, the couch I bought secondhand, the small table by the window, the lamp that gave off warm light at night. This space had become my shelter, my place of healing. That evening, I cleaned slowly, not in a rush, not with anxiety. I folded blankets, wiped counters, and made space in the closet. Each small task felt thoughtful, almost ceremonial. I realized then that kindness doesn't always come at the right time. Sometimes it arrives when you're still healing, and you have to decide whether to close your door or open it gently. As I laid out clean sheets in the guest room, I felt something unexpected. Not fear, not resentment, purpose. Some moments test who we are becoming, and that night I chose compassion over caution. If this story is touching your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Your support helps these quiet, real-life stories reach the people who need them most. The day she arrived, she carried only one small suitcase. It seemed almost symbolic, like she was bringing herself and nothing more. I opened the door and we hugged for a long moment, the kind of hug that doesn't need words, that says, "I see you. I understand you. You're not alone." She stepped inside, looking around my small apartment. She smiled softly. "It's cozy," she said. I nodded, though my chest felt tight. Cozy didn't fully capture the peace I had worked so hard to build here, away from the chaos of that old house. We sat at my kitchen table, rain tapping gently against the window. The room smelled faintly of coffee and the vanilla candle I had lit earlier. Neither of us spoke much at first. There was no need. The silence between us was comfortable, warm, even healing. We both carried memories of the same man, memories that were bitter and tender all at once. Eventually, she spoke, quietly, as though testing the waters. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "Not for what happened to me, but for not seeing things sooner, for not stopping him when I should have." I reached across the table and took her hand. "You didn't fail," I said gently. "It's not your fault. He made his own choices." She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. I handed her a napkin and smiled softly. It felt strange, comforting someone who had once been part of the family that hurt me, but it also felt right. We spent the afternoon sharing tea and quiet words, each of us careful not to reopen old wounds, each of us recognizing the pain we had endured. She laughed at a story about her son, a small, forced laugh at first, and I joined in, not out of amusement, but out of understanding. The sound filled the room like a small promise that healing was possible, even in unlikely places. That night, we sat together on the couch. Rain continued to fall outside, soft and steady. No one asked questions. No one demanded explanations. We simply existed together, two women who loved the same man differently and who had both been hurt. In that silence, I realized something important. Family isn't always about blood or marriage. Sometimes family is the person who shows up gently when life is loud. Sometimes it's the person who offers a listening ear, a soft word, a quiet hand. By the time she went to bed, I could see the weight on her shoulders had lifted slightly. Not entirely, not completely, but enough to breathe again. Enough to remember who she was outside of that house, outside of that marriage, outside of the pain. And I realized in that moment that my heart had grown too, not in anger, not in resentment, but in understanding, in compassion, in quiet strength. Two women carrying memories of the same man, yet finding a way to sit together in peace. It was strange, it was new, it was healing. And in that small apartment, with the rain softly drumming against the windows, I felt something rare. Hope. Quiet, gentle, fragile, but real. 3 days after she arrived, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number at first, but something in my chest tightened when I saw his name flash on the screen, my ex-husband. I stared at the phone, fingers hovering over the answer button. For a moment, I thought about letting it go to voicemail, but something told me to pick up. "Hello," I said, my voice calm. Not cold, not angry, just steady. There was a pause on the other end. Then his voice, hesitant, almost unfamiliar. "Where's my mother?" he asked. I could hear the tension in his words, the sudden awareness that someone he loved, or thought he did, was no longer at the mercy of his chaos. "She's safe," I said quietly, calmly, firmly. I didn't add any judgment, no extra words to stir guilt. I simply stated the truth. Another pause. Then he said, I didn't think she would come to you." His voice carried more than surprise. It carried a hint of shame. "She didn't belong in chaos," I said gently, letting the words sink in. The silence on the line told me everything I needed to know. He didn't argue, he didn't yell, he didn't beg, and that, in a strange way, was enough. I thought about all the nights I stayed up crying over the same man, wondering if he would ever notice my worth. All the dinners where his excuses felt heavier than his apologies. All the moments I wished he would see me, not just my presence, but my soul. And now, hearing him finally quiet, not defensive, not demanding, I realized something. Healing doesn't always need recognition. Closure doesn't always come with apologies. Sometimes it comes simply by standing firm in your own peace. I hung up the phone gently. No anger, no resentment, just quiet satisfaction. That night, I went to the kitchen and poured myself a cup of tea. Rain fell softly outside, familiar and comforting. I sat by the window, sipping slowly, feeling the warmth in my chest. It was a different kind of peace, one that didn't depend on him or anyone else. It was mine. She, his mother, smiled at me across the room. No words were necessary. We shared a look, understanding the small victory of reclaiming dignity and calm in the midst of so much hurt. Sometimes the hardest lessons come quietly. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most teach us how to protect our hearts. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stay calm, stay kind, and let life unfold as it should. And in that quiet apartment, listening to the rain, I finally understood. Strength isn't loud. Strength doesn't need recognition. Strength is soft. Strength is peace. If this part of the story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Your support helps these real-life stories reach the people who need them most. She stayed with me for 2 weeks. Not long, not short, just enough time to settle, to breathe, to feel safe again. In that period, something quietly shifted between us. We didn't talk about the past much. We didn't dissect our pain or the man who caused it. We simply existed in the same space, sharing moments of quiet companionship and small gestures of care. Mornings were simple. Coffee, light conversation, the soft hum of the radio playing in the background. Evenings were slower. Tea by the window, the rain tapping against the glass, shadows stretching across the floor. I watched her relax, watched her begin to let go of some of the weight she had been carrying for months, maybe years. We laughed a little, not loud, not forced, just soft laughter at memories and odd little stories about her son that only she would tell. And I realized, sometimes healing doesn't need big gestures. Sometimes it's the quiet moments that matter most. She told me about the fear she had felt before she arrived, the fear that I would reject her, that I would still carry anger in my heart. But I didn't. I had spent enough time holding on to the past. I had learned that anger never heals anything. Only understanding, patience, and kindness can do that. We shared meals, we shared stories, we shared silence. In those silences, I felt a strange kind of bond forming. We were both women who had loved the same man, in different ways, and both of us had been hurt. And yet, instead of letting that hurt divide us, we had chosen to sit together quietly, to listen, to care. When she finally decided to move into a nearby apartment, I helped her pack the few things she had brought. It was a bittersweet moment. I felt joy that she would be close by, safe and starting over. But I also felt the strange ache of knowing the time we shared had come to an end. We hugged at the door, a long, gentle hug that spoke more than words could. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." I smiled, feeling warmth spread through my chest. "You're welcome," I said, "and don't forget, you're stronger than you think." After she left, the apartment felt quieter, but it didn't feel empty. It felt steady. It felt alive with the lessons we had shared. I realized then that healing doesn't always look like forgiveness. It doesn't always mean reaching out to the person who hurt you. Sometimes healing is choosing peace, choosing yourself, choosing to let go of what no longer serves you. I didn't get my marriage back. I didn't get apologies or explanations, but I got something far more valuable: my dignity, my peace, and my strength. And somehow, that was enough to close my door at night and breathe without fear. Enough to look forward to tomorrow without pain holding me back. Enough to finally feel free.
Life has a quiet way of teaching us lessons we never expected. Sometimes the hardest experiences shape us in ways we don't notice at first. Divorce, betrayal, and broken trust can leave deep scars, but they also leave strength, clarity, and wisdom. I learned this slowly, in the quiet moments after the storm had passed. After my ex-husband moved his mistress into the house we once shared, I thought the pain would never end. I thought I would carry bitterness forever. But then his mother reached out, and I realized something profound. Life isn't about holding grudges or waiting for people to change. It's about how you carry yourself through the storm. It's about finding peace even when the world around you feels chaotic. I learned that family isn't always defined by blood or by marriage. Sometimes family is the person who shows up when life gets hard, even if they've been hurt too. Sometimes family is the person who chooses kindness over anger, compassion over resentment. For me, it was my former mother-in-law, a woman who had once been part of the life I had lost, now becoming a source of comfort, understanding, and connection. Healing doesn't always look like grand gestures. It doesn't always require apologies or forgiveness from those who hurt you. Sometimes healing is quiet. Sometimes it's small. Sometimes it's simply allowing yourself to live without carrying the weight of someone else's choices. I've also learned that strength isn't always loud. It doesn't have to be. Strength can be soft. Strength can be quiet. Strength can be choosing peace in the middle of chaos. Strength can be letting go, trusting yourself, and finding joy in the life you're building, even if it's different from the one you imagined. Every day, I close my door and breathe in that peace. Every day, I remind myself that my happiness doesn't depend on anyone else. Every day, I carry the lessons of pain, love, and resilience with me. And I hope that anyone listening to this story can feel that too. If there's one thing I want to leave you with, it's this. Life will challenge you. It will test your patience, your heart, and your spirit. But you will survive. You will grow. You will learn to love yourself in ways you never thought possible. And one day, when you look back, you'll see that even the hardest moments were part of building the person you are today. Stronger, wiser, and full of compassion. So if this story touched your heart or gave you a moment of peace, remember to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Your support helps these real-life stories reach the people who need them most, those who are learning, healing, and finding strength just like us. Life is a journey, and every ending can quietly teach a beginning. Choose kindness. Choose peace. Choose yourself.